Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and I've been waiting personally for a lot of class changes for the patch 8.2. But Blizzard has been pretty meager in terms of adjusting some of the classes and specs that I'm looking forward to. Instead, Blizzard has been focusing on the Heart of Azeroth system, a system in 8.2 where you'll be able to earn essences that provide extra abilities as well as passives all across the board for every single class and spec. Blizzard has been really banking a lot into this essence system, and in today's video I want to take a look at some of these essences after a couple different rounds of buffs and nerfs, talk to you guys about some of the best essences and what they do, then some of the other essences that might not be that great but have some potential, and simply break down this whole system a little bit more now that we have a little bit more balance tuning into the patch. I'll be looking out forward for more class changes if any come in the future, but this is what we currently have so far, so you might as well take a look at it with a critical eye. So the Heart of Azeroth seems to be kind of like the big thing that Blizzard is trying to put all the chips in one basket. I was really expecting a lot of class and spec changes. There's just a couple specs that I'm hoping get a couple updates to make them a lot more fun and playable. But Blizzard so far has been investing a lot of time into the necklace stuff. Let's start talking about some of the top tier essences we have right now. The first one I want to discuss is Condensed Life. This one is a very interesting one. It functions very similar to an Elemental Shaman Elemental whenever you summon a Fire Ellie, except this one will let you summon a Elemental of Azeroth, a Guardian of Azeroth to aid in combat. Every 8 seconds, the Guardian will just spike the enemy with fire spikes of Azerite spikes. Every time he spikes the enemy, it grants you haste. So you can use this as a big cooldown to just get you a lot of haste rampant. This guy lasts out in the combat for 30 seconds, so he's out there doing quite a bit of damage. Also, every one of his spikes goes into this passive ability as well. Every time an enemy gets spiked with a spike of Azerite, they take 10% more damage. Passively, you also have a chance with your abilities to spike the enemy. So this is something where you can summon this Azeroth Guardian who will grant you haste while constantly spiking the enemy, providing you the 10% debuff on the target, giving you all this haste so you can really use this as a big cooldown. This is actually kind of really cool, and I think this is going to be a very much needed for a lot of boss fights. There's a lot of classes that have really long-term bursts. So imagine a Demon Hunter with 10% DPS or 10% damage debuff on an enemy the whole time while they have this stack and haste. It lines up with their cooldowns really well, 3-minute and 40-minute duration, so it can be really powerful for a lot of classes. It's also a very powerful passive, so if you do decide to use this essence passively, it has a good effect. The 10% damage increase that enemies take will be extremely good for classes that have, let's say, non-consistent burst. So if you're a class that doesn't consistently do damage over time, but you rather have bursts of damage, if you can line up your burst of damage with this 10% debuff on the enemy, then you'll be able to get a lot of value out of this essence. Another essence that's also in the top 3 is Blood of the Enemy. We've seen this one before, and I've made videos of the class bursts for BFA 8.2, and in every one of the class bursts I had to use Blood of the Enemy. What this does is lets you in melee range erupt some shadow damage on enemies, making enemies be more likely and susceptible to a crit by 25%. So it basically adds in whatever abilities you do on a target, 25% extra crit. Passively, my rogue in Assassination has 25% crit. With this ability on those targets marked by Blood of the Enemy, I have 50% crit. Also, if your abilities do crit, if you do get this essence fully upgraded, which it'll be a whole system in 8.2, those crits will do 35% more damage. This is huge on a fairly short cooldown of 1.5 minutes for a, what's the duration of this? 15 seconds? 15-second duration for your abilities to be more likely to crit, and those crits are a lot more powerful, makes so many classes burst completely and utterly insane. Your critical strikes with abilities and spells give you a stack of Blood Soaked, which increases your crit up to 25 stacks. Once at full stacks, it converts into haste. You also have a small chance at fully upgraded to only use 15 stacks of those crit stacks to get you all that haste. So sometimes you'll have crit together with haste at the same time. I think a lot of classes benefit from crit even if you don't have a directly crit enforced playstyle. So I feel like this is very, very powerful. I think the active ability as well as the passives are all really, really good. It's a melee range ability, so like a Dastro Warlock will need to run into melee, but I think the 35% more damage on those fatty Chaos Bolt crits is definitely going to be worth. The last essence that's going to be in the top 3 tiers is going to be Vision of Perfection. Powerful ability that doesn't have an active, rather 2 passives. Your spells and abilities, at least for my Assassination, have a chance to activate Vendetta for 35% of its base duration. This applies to Vendetta, but also every other bursty ability for every class. So Wings for Paladins, I think the Army of the Dead for Death Knight, I think the elemental for LE shamans, so it has a chance to get you the big cooldown. This is going to be great for some classes, not as good for others, as every class plays a little different. For Assassination, it's going to be great, or like a Fire Mage to use Combustion, get as much damage, as much value as you can during that small window, because that's where most of your damage comes from anyway. You also have a chance, whenever this thing procs, to get a little bit of haste for allies, which is cool. The passive of this is also just as powerful, and it's going to benefit every single class in the game. Reduces the cooldown of that powerful ability by 13%, and increases your versatility by 79. The verse increase doesn't really do much. If my Vendetta goes, let's say, from a 2-minute cooldown, with Vision of Perfection just being slotted in, to 1.7. It also takes away that active extra ability, so if you like passive, this one is going to be a very powerful passive that plays with your big buttons. Definitely going to be in the top 3 tiers with Blood of the Enemy, Condensed Life, and Vision of Perfection. Most of these are going to be sitting in your main slot, but the passives are also very powerful to sit in one of the minor slots as well. Alright, let's talk about some of the more unique traits, essences that are just not that great. I think they are good in some cases, but not all. For example, we have Conflict and Strife. Conflict and Strife is a weird essence that's awarded through PvP. It lets you the use of one PvP talent in both PvP and PvE. So if you're someone who plays PvP a lot, let's say as a rogue, you passively get Smoke Bomb. So now it gives you an option to put a different ability in here. So now you can go Creeping Venom, System Shock, and maybe even Maneuverability. So now you have 4 honor talents to run in PvP. So this is going to be exceptionally powerful for anybody who does PvP in WoW, because it gives you an extra option. So for Unholy Death Knights, you get like Necrotic Strike, which is insane. So this is actually really good for PvP. In PvE, however, this one can be kind of a give or a take. So for example, like a Smoke Bomb in PvE has some uses, but not all. In Necrotic Strike for Death Knights, like how are you going to use that in a dungeon? So this one is kind of weird. It has some potential, and it's going to, I think, make certain classes like Boomkins and Pharaohs a must-have in every raid because of the different honor talents they bring that actually help out the whole raid, whether you're a caster heavy or a melee heavy composition. So this is an interesting one. Minor effect for it is definitely PvP heavy. Your spells and abilities have a chance to increase your versatility, which is kind of cool. Being a victim of a loss of control moment, Imperative effect grants a stack of Strife as well. So that one is aight if you like versatility. I maybe could see myself using this for my Outlaw, but what really comes down to is the actual active ability, and that's going to depend on every single class. Memory of Lucid Dreams is a very interesting one that could be really good, but also really bad. I think the passive of this one is great, but the active is a little weird. It's a 3-minute cooldown, so it's pretty big. Clear your mind, attune yourself with Heart of Azeroth, increasing the resource generation of all your abilities by a metric ton. So if you, let's say, have, I guess, what would it be for Frost Mages? Mana? I don't think it would be mana, would it? Oh, maybe it would be mana, actually. Like Shadow Priests, they get Insanity faster, Boomkins get Star Search power faster, Shamans get Maelstrom faster, Rogues just have 100% more energy regen, so you use more abilities, Hunters get more focus, I think Death Knights get more runic power, like Warriors get more rage, pair ability that generates rage or runic power. So this one is very interesting. 12 seconds of just increased amount of resources could be really, really good. But it also could backfire, because sometimes it feels like that I'm getting way too many resources that I can spend. The passive of this one is pretty cool. Your spells and abilities have a chance to refund 50% of the resource that you spend on that and heal you for a bit and increase your versatility. I like the passive of this one, and I feel like Memory of Lucid Dreams is going to be one of those that will be slotted in the passive, so you can get your resources back faster. So energy refunds, focus refunds, rage refunds, mana, soul shards refunds, maelstrom refunds are all going to be very good. I just don't really know how many classes will actually want to end up using the resource generation. Maybe like a survival hunter if you want to spam Mongoose bites all day. Another one I thought was pretty good is Crucible Flame. This one's kind of cool because what it does is gives you like this fireball ability that kind of lets you just either choose it on yourself or an enemy. What it does is puts just a blast on an enemy or an ally with either heal or fire damage, and then you burn the target for additional of 75% of that damage to hit them over 6 seconds. Each consecrated flame gives you a buff that makes the next one do more and more damage, until the third one does the most amount of damage. If you like the idea of, let's say, a rogue, and you always want to be some kind of a spell weaver, and you want to be able to, let's say, target an enemy and blast them from a distance, except these guys can be targeted, that'd be kind of cool, being a rogue that can shoot this fiery ball spell from distance. Or if you want to be PvPing, you just need a self-heal for any moment, put yourself a big heal and a hot afterwards could be good in some duel situations. Then we have Focusing Iris, 1.5 minute cooldown, blast the enemies with a bunch of fire damage in front of you. This one's going to be great for AoE. It has a neat haste stack and passive for it, but I think this one is going to be used in like Mythic Plus dungeons to clear out a pack of mobs, especially if your class doesn't have any good AoE. So wait for reaping and then blast everything apart. This one's going to take care of a bunch of mobs very quickly and efficiently. Lastly, I have this other trait that I want to talk about. A really bad active ability, but a really good passive. It's going to be the Unbound Force. So the active ability of this ability, 45-second cooldown, so you should be using this a lot. It fires Shard of Azerite at your enemy for a fair amount of damage over 2 seconds, and if those shards crit, they do 300% more damage. The damage of this one is very, very mediocre. It's very poor, and I don't think I would ever want to interrupt my rotation unless I have literally nothing to do with my energy as a rogue if I ever run out of energy. The passive for this one, though, is pretty good. When an ability fails to critical strike, you have a high chance to gain Reckless Force. When Reckless Force reaches 20 stacks, your critical strike is increased by 100% for 5 seconds. Now imagine a class that could maybe line up some powerful abilities during that 100% crit increase as a passive. I definitely can think of a few. As an Outlaw rogue or even Assassination, get Phantom Venoms with Toxic Blades on the target. So imagine this one as a passive together with Blood of the Enemy. So now you have a 100% crit chance, and these two abilities play off of crit with one another. So this one could be a very powerful passive with a crappy active ability which you would never use, but definitely a solid passive that plays off of other essences. So that could be a really good combo. I wanted to know this one because of how bad it is, but also of how good it is. And none of the other traits I really want to talk about because I feel like they kind of buff and nerf them, and some of them don't really work, like Ripple in Space. But I guess you guys, if you want to test them all out on PTR, you're more than welcome to them. But I covered all the ones that I want to talk about. So far, it seems like Blizzard is setting a lot of their attention on these essences instead of class changes. Now, I hope there's more class changes in the future for 8.2, because I feel like there's definitely a few classes and specs, and I'm pretty sure you guys can think of a few that could use a bit more work. So hopefully Blizzard addresses some of these classes, some of the changes, maybe makes adjustments like subtlety rogues in AoE or in PvE. We just don't really see them ever. For example, can sub get a little bit of a PvE buff? I know they're good in PvP. We don't need more PvP buffs, but a dungeon or raid buffs would be really, really nice. So maybe these essences will be able to fix all the classes. At least that's my tinfoil hat theory. Maybe Blizzard is not focusing on classes, but rather than making these essences a kind of one-fits-all style of upgrades for every single class, where every class can use these in one way or another to make up for some of the gaps. Not a bursty class? Grab Burst of the Blood of the Enemy or Condensed Life to give you a little bit more oomph. Are you a bursty class and needs more passives? Hey, Unbound Force passive is pretty good. Maybe Vision of Perfection could be really good as well. Like an AoE, Essence of Focusing Iris into Mythic Plus dungeons. So I don't really know how that's gonna work. I'm still a little skeptical, but I'm also kind of excited, but just very cautiously approaching this with cautious excitement. So you guys let me know in the comments below, what do you think about all these essences? I think Blizzard is going to be nerfing and buffing them a little bit very soon. If anything, I hope they fix some of the ones that don't work, or some of the ones that nobody will ever really use, by making them maybe like super busted and janky. But maybe this essence thing will be enough to make certain classes feel great and play better. But we'll just have to wait and see how that's going to go down. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in your comments below, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.